the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by NFL Player Development Specialist and Director of Football at DNA Prep Academy, Aire Justin. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast. I'm Phil George, and our guest this week, he wears quite a few hats. He's a man of many different titles, and I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself and tell him about everything that he's done. He's one of the most involved people in Southern California in the game of football. It's Aire Justin.
What's going on, brother? Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on the show, man. Like I told you earlier, I'm a fan of your show. I really love what you guys are doing. I'm excited to be here. So, a little bit about myself. My name is Aire Justin. From LA. Went to Washington State, played there. Took my journey back to LA, and became a coach, trainer. Most recently, I'm here at DNA now. I started my company, Aire Athletics, about 6 years ago. Started doing personal training, working with NFL athletes, doing NFL Combine, NFL offseason, as well as college athletes and high school athletes. This year and the last year, I've been transitioning a little bit more into the youth sports, which is why I'm here at DNA Sports Academy now, which is a sports academy middle school, reclassification middle school from 5th to 8th grade. We hold football, basketball, soccer, and baseball at the moment. I'm the director of football here. I'm also the defensive coordinator at Calabasas High School. And I do the personal training with Aire Athletics with the NFL Combine and offseason as well.
How many hours of sleep do you get a day?
Not enough. Not enough.
Yeah, so, like you mentioned, obviously you had a very successful playing career in high school, and we're one of the fortunate few to get an opportunity to play at the Division I college level. But this is mostly going to be about your post-playing career, and essentially your entire post-playing career has been dedicated to helping young athletes, and young people in general be the best versions of themselves, get the best opportunities possible. And of course, that's every coach's goal. If you're a listener to this program, you've heard the number of coaches that we've had on this program, and they all have that same goal beyond winning games, beyond winning championships. They want to help young people, athletes become better people, better leaders. But the thing, and we were talking about this before the show, the thing that differentiates you is, yes, so many of these coaches that we talk to have the opportunity to touch athletes of all different ages and all different skill levels and help them through every stage in your life. You're doing it all at once. Yeah. And that doesn't happen by accident. I mean, to dedicate yourself to that degree, you have to have a passion for what you do. You have to have a passion for all of these kids. Where does that passion come from?
I always say, I want to be the person that I needed when I was them. And I really believe that knowledge is nothing unless you're giving it back. So I'm always a student of the game, somebody that's continuously trying to learn, only so that I can be able to give that knowledge back to everyone else that seeks that information and seeks that help. So that's at every level. And to me, it's just honestly a lot more rewarding trying to give back and help to the youth in the community. But I realize and I understand that, there are athletes at every level who can benefit from it and who have adversity at every level and, may not have certain access to certain knowledge that I may be able to provide. And so I make myself available for each and every one of them. And I try to do my best to try to help them the best I can.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. You talk about wanting to be the person that you needed when you were that age, and you just checked off a couple of things that some young athletes don't necessarily have access to, whether it be knowledge, whether it be that kind of support system. So go into a little bit more depth about what are some of the most common things that are lacking in the lives of young athletes, and to your point, that maybe you wish you had a little bit more access to when you were at that same stage?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is, specific mentoring, guiding, as far as character outside of football, is a lot of it, making specific decisions, understanding just how your decisions and every decision has a cause and effect. To be able to stay on track and stay disciplined and understand and continue to be reminded on who and why you're doing it. And that's on the character side, because that's something like, we all fall short in situations where we make decisions that, we didn't have much guidance or direction on, and then, it hurts us in ways that we just didn't expect. And so when you're an athlete, you're subject to so many different distractions in life on and off the field and adversity. And, just having somebody that's there that's been through it and, has experienced it and can provide a different perspective for them to understand is something that I'm really passionate about. On the other end, when it comes to actually the game and the knowledge of, we talked about my slogan, raw talent isn't enough. So raw talent can get you to the league, but technique will keep you there. A lot of athletes and a lot of guys that I come into contact with, the details of the technique that I provide for them, most of them don't have any idea of what I'm talking about initially. And, when I see that, I realize that, there's a need for that. I go down to the South every now and then, and a lot of kids down there who are coming from, different environments and backgrounds that don't have access to trainers like me maybe or whatever. They're like, they're trying to find that access and get that kind of detail because people just aren't teaching, or it's just hard. Anywhere you go, it's hard to find somebody that you can trust that's giving you the information that you believe that can help you. A lot of coaches, only teach what they've learned, and especially at the youth level, right? And sometimes they may not have different experience that can kind of help them prepare for certain levels of play, and that's kind of why I'm at the youth level now. Even for some of my combine guys for the NFL, when I go and I talk to them and I speak with them about, their interviews or chalk talk and talk about the game, there's some things that they can't explain to me that in my eyes are basic. And so, I'm like, okay, well, you should have learned this in middle school or high school or something like that. But, I'm here to provide that because, I can.
Now let's break some of those down, because I know that you talk a lot about technique specifically, and how technique is really a lost art in the game today. Now, when you talk about that, be specific. What kind of techniques are you talking about that you feel are kind of lacking? And I'll be honest with you, there's a very good possibility that I may not understand, but I know that we got a lot of young ball players listening to the show, especially, you're a DB specialist. We have so many young DBs at the high school level that we've gotten to meet and interact with over the last year and a half. So speak to them, and what are some of those finer technical aspects of the game that have kind of gone by the wayside?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you're, seeking a trainer or somebody that's going to help you develop, you always want to make sure that they can articulate the how and why. If they can't articulate the how and why, then maybe you need to find somebody else. But when I say that, the how and why, if I get more specific, as far as a DB perspective, and we're talking about press coverage, right? Press coverage is one of the hardest things to do as a defensive back. And like we talked about before, the game has changed, where it's made it a lot more difficult to play DB. And these guys, these athletes are getting better and better, especially the receivers, are really good. So the discipline within the technique and the how and why is breaking down press coverage is, what is your responsibility in press coverage? Your responsibility is maintaining your leverage, controlling your cushion, and eye discipline. Now, I know that, but now it's time to break it down. Now, how do I do that? And then you need to be able to articulate that. So if I'm breaking that down and I'm saying, how do I maintain my leverage? I maintain my leverage by maintaining a base. How do I maintain a base? I need to be outside shoulder width apart. I need to be able to push from where? Where do I push from? I need to be able to move lateral. So I'm pushing from my quads and the balls of my feet. In order to push from the quads and the balls of my feet, I have to have a good outside shoulder width apart base. If my feet are too close, I can't load. If my feet are too wide, I can't load. So I have no strength to push off my quads. So when you see a corner or a DB that's playing press coverage, but he's standing straight up, he has no secure base to push lateral, so now he's putting himself at a disadvantage to open up the gate or hop or he puts himself at a disadvantage, and you can't chance that when you're going against a guy like Justin Jefferson. Then it's over for you. And so that's one example of being able to articulate that, and then being able to build the foundation to develop that skill set, right? And then so that they can be disciplined and articulate it back. So all of my guys, I make sure that they can fully comprehend and then relay all the information back to me, because that lets me know now if you can relay all that information back. So now when you're in the fourth quarter and you're tired, everybody's tired. But what's going to allow you to stay disciplined is you understanding exactly what you need to do right and what not to do wrong, so that you can remind yourself every time I line up, I got to make sure I got a good base. I got my feet square, my knees square, my hips square. I got a good base. I got good load. I got good eye discipline. I have good cushion. All that stuff right there. I just got to maintain that. Now I can just go play.
I think that's such an important distinction that you just brought up, is the difference between understanding the task versus understanding why the task is important. Right. And that's something, I'm no athlete, but that's something that I've come across several times throughout my career. Is I'll be given an assignment, and sure, I'll understand what to do. I will understand what is being asked of me, but it's so much easier, and it makes me so much more into the task when I understand why it's important, how it fits into the general picture. Mm-hmm. How do you profess that idea as being important to your athletes, and also how do you test for that? Because obviously, you could teach somebody a technique. Watch them go out onto the field, perform it expertly. But even then, how do you know in that moment whether they're just doing what they're told or whether they actually understand what they're doing and why?
So mostly it's just the articulation that they relay. So if I know that they can consistently relay the information back, then I know that they have a base of understanding, right? And then from there, it just becomes constant repetition. Right, and so it's very hard. So I can teach you, and we can go out there, and I can give you all the details. It doesn't mean that tomorrow you're going to be Deion Sanders or whatever, right? So it's definitely a process that you got to continuously be very passionate about, to want to put the consistent work in and discipline. And that's where the test comes. The test comes is when, so it's all about, I always say, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So you prepare and you keep working. So that now the test is when you have that opportunity, now you're prepared to take advantage of it. And now it's, either put up or shut up. And, you just got to put in the time to make sure you put yourself at an advantage.
I imagine you're the kind of coach who has no problem answering as many questions as your athletes have for you.
Absolutely. I feel that that's my responsibility. When I talk about some coaches who, may not have, may only teach what they were taught, I think that as a coach, as a trainer, it is our responsibility to make sure that we do our due diligence to have as much knowledge and seek as much knowledge as we can so that we can be able to relay it and help the kids if that's our position. I feel like if you're here and you're calling yourself a coach or trainer and you're trying to help another individual fully understand to put him in the best position to succeed, you need to make sure you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you have the answers to his questions, and which is why I say ask your coaches in a respectful way when they're teaching you something, to explain the how and why, like why and how, make it make sense so they can fully comprehend it so that they can have the best opportunity to succeed. If you can't do that, then I advise you to go and seek that information for yourself as a coach before you start to subject yourself to, these athletes.
Sure. So that's the technique aspect. That's the technical skill side of things. But the other important aspect that you hit on, aside from raw talent and grasp of knowledge and technique, is character. Yeah. And that's an entirely different thing to teach because, hey, there's books and books and books and all kinds of philosophies on how to teach football and how to teach the fundamentals. But how do you teach character?
I think it's also, the approach of communication. Each kid, as a coach, in my experience, I realize everyone is different. You may have a philosophy and you may have an approach, but you have to be able to listen to each individual so that you can understand exactly where his background, where his perspective, where he came from, how he's able to comprehend the information that you're able to give so that he can understand right from wrong when it comes to character and making decisions, controlling what you can control, right? So, when you're young or in any situation, we have a habit of wanting to kind of point the finger and blame others for situations. But, the hard part is to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we doing everything that we're supposed to do every day to put ourselves in position to be successful? And that's not just on the field as a player, but character. Like, am I actually coming with a good attitude? You can control your attitude. You can control your work ethic. You can control your discipline. You can control your time management. You can control how you treat people, your respect, right? How you talk to people. And so that all those traits build the character. And being able to, one, show that as an example myself, and then be able to help guide when people do make mistakes and not just, you made a mistake, so I just, throw you out or whatever, or kick you out, or, let's sit down, let's have a conversation on like why you chose to make that decision, and let me try to help you give a different perspective to help you for the future.
Those are the things that you can control. What are some of the things for an athlete that they can't control? Because obviously when you go through life, you're going to have people who don't treat you right. You're going to have, you're going to end up in situations that maybe aren't the best of you, and that's not necessarily through any fault of your own. What are some of those things that athletes run into that they have no control over? And more importantly, beyond that, how do you give them the tools to let those things go and focus on what they actually are able to control?
So you have situations where, say I choose a college. Okay, so let's just say maybe a situation with Deion Sanders right now,
Sure.
right, where he recruited these kids. They go to Jackson State, and then they may assume that he may be there, but he's not, and that's the game. So you got to control what you can control. Now that coach that was there, that you assumed are expected to be there, is going to do what's best for him and other people in his community, and trying to help others. And so you may feel that it was it was directed to you, or you may have your feelings hurt, but you still have life. You can't control what the coach does. You can't control what his decision. You can't control him saying that I'm gonna have somebody else start over you. You can't control that maybe you get hurt. You can't control other people's actions at all. The only thing you can control is your actions. So when you have that situation, now you always tell my guys you always have two options. You can either complain or you can find a solution. Right, so I always tell them all the time, so yeah, I mean, you might be hurt. It might be a situation where it's like you're frustrated, but okay, take that, and then what are you going to do? It's always just moving forward. What are you going to do about it? So now he left. Now you have an option. What's your solution? Are you going to stay, write it out with the next coaches and make the most of it and execute with the opportunities that you have? Or do you feel it's better that you go to another school with a different opportunity too? Whatever it is, you have to choose and then live with that decision and make the most of it. And so I try to just make them understand that, whatever you choose, it's always your decision, and you can only control what you can control.
As kind of an aside to that, you brought up Deion Sanders, and that's obviously something that's very much in the news right now, very much a topic of conversation, especially with the transfer portal just opening up yesterday, and we're all aware of all the debates surrounding that. So kind of as an aside to that conversation, what are your general opinions of the transfer portal and the prominence that it's gained? Because obviously, both sides of the debate. On one side, some people look down on it. Some people view it as disloyalty, taking the easy way out. But at the same time, others will look at it as, hey, I got to look out for myself. I got to look out for the best opportunity. I've got my eyes on making serious money at the next level, and this is going to help me do that. Where do you come down on that debate?
I choose their own. So I come with the perspective that I believe that loyalty is great and it's important, but at the end of the day, I believe majority of people are going to always do what's best for them. And when I look at it in the sports world, whether you're a GM, a coach, athletic director, whatever it is, they're going to make decisions that's best for them in their program. Why can't the kid do that? And so
that's what I think.
Yeah, that's been the backlash where it's like, oh, the kid transfers, he's unloyal. Like, no, because the coach, as we see, if he has a better opportunity for himself and his family, he's going to take advantage of it. And I believe that the kids should too. And one thing about it that I will say with the transfer is, I believe in some cases it's created a lack of fighting adversity to a certain extent. Like, it's given an excuse to some kids or if something's not working out, I'm going to leave. At the first sign of any adversity, I'm going to leave and give up, it could look like, right? And in that aspect, I would always how I talk to some of my athletes when they give me an issue that they're having at wherever they're going, they're thinking about transferring, I always make sure I just put out the landscape on what are you doing compared to what you want, and making sure that you're doing everything that's necessary to get what you want. And then if things are not working out, you're not having a fair opportunity to succeed, then you got to go, then maybe you have to explore something else. But don't just leave at this first sign, okay, you lose your spot, right? Because maybe you weren't executing and doing what you were supposed to be doing. And so now you want to point the finger, they're hating on me, they don't like me, I'm going to leave and go somewhere else because the grass isn't always greener.
Yeah, exactly. You should be able to, at the very least, give a pretty sound reason as to why there is better than here. Yeah, because, exactly. To say that there may not have the same issues as here.
Because you're going to have that in life. You're going to always have adversity, whether you're in sports or in the workspace, office workspace, anywhere you're at. You're going to have a boss that maybe you may not like what's going on, or you may not like your job, or whatever it is. What are you going to do? You got to make the most of it. Excuse me, but if you're not getting the opportunity to have a good peace of mind and be successful the way you want, then you explore different opportunities. But you don't just first sign of adversity, I got to get out of here. And there's some athletes who do that, and I would just suggest that you guys don't just take one sign and leave, because the grass isn't always greener, right?
You know, it's funny. I think about, I hear you say that, and I think back to my own career and some of the decisions that I've made over time.
Yeah.
Before I got into this business, I spent a lot of time working in marketing and production in college athletics, mostly at the mid-major level. And I had several different stops, and I remember at each stop, I would think to myself, okay, you know, now I'm going somewhere with a little more money, a little more people in the office, more facilities. I'm not going to have to deal with those issues at the other place because, you know, now we're in a much better spot. No, the same same issues exist everywhere. They just look a little bit different. Yeah, and no matter what they look like, you have to figure out how to deal with it.
Exactly, because it's all going to come back to you, like, and what you're doing, what you're not doing, so that you can be able to put yourself in that space that you need to be in. And so everybody else is going to do what they're going to do for them. You got to make sure you focus on doing what's best for you, and whatever that looks like, make the decision, live with it, and try to make the most of it.
We talk about the support system that you also need in place. And your father played in the NFL, so did two uncles and a cousin. That was, I imagine, in large part your support system. And no matter how much talent you have, no matter how good your mindset is, you always need that, whether that's an older teammate who got recruited or drafted ahead of you, whether it's a coach who played at the higher levels that you want to get to. We just talked about the people in your life. So whether it's them or anybody else that you want to mention, who were the most important figures in your support system, and what sort of unique guidance did you get from them?
Yeah, it was definitely my dad. Like, he was very passionate and hands-on. Like, he was very big on discipline and hard work. Right, so for me, you know, as I remember my childhood, it wasn't a lot of having fun outside with my friends necessarily until I put in the work. So I remember clearly, like, elementary, coming out of school, my friends are going to the playground, and my dad is there with my Rottweiler, and he's like, "You're not going over there. Take this chain and go run a mile." And I'm running miles, and I'm doing pull-ups, and I'm doing push-ups, and I'm doing 100-yard back pedals, and I'm going to the hills and doing back pedals up the hills. And, but I had a pretty good balance, because my dad was really strict about, you know, the work ethic with football. It's been like, everything was football. My mom, on the other hand, was school, and making sure that I was, focused and prepared for the school aspect. So I had a really good support system between both of them on both sides, and each one of them cared more about the other. So it was kind of evened it out. But
so I want to follow up on this, actually. So just kind of tying it back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier. When you came home from school, all your friends were going to the playground, and your dad said, "You're not going. Take this chain, run a mile."
Yeah.
Did you understand why that was important?
Absolutely not. I dreaded it every day. Like, so, you know, he bred me to be a defensive back since I was like 6 years old, and I was always pretty good and technical, because I had him, my other uncles, I would fly out to Seattle. My other uncle played for the Seahawks, fly out there, and then he'll train me, and I'll do some work with him. My other uncle played for the LA Rams and for the Baltimore Colts, and then I would have a little bit from everything. So it was all of that, but it was always work. So, you know, I resented it. Like, I hated playing corner, just because I was always backpedaling everywhere, but I was always good at it. So wherever I went, I had to play it. But it wasn't, like I said, I resented it, but I didn't appreciate it at all until, I got to college, and I realized what all that work was. But I was like, man, I don't want to go work out today. Like, I'm tired of going over to see my dad, but I appreciate him and respect him so much, because he had a different vision, but he understood, and that when the time came, all that work paid off. But I definitely didn't understand it. I was like, I was complaining all the time.
And now you're paying it all forward.
And now I'm paying it all forward. Like, it's such a blessing that I had those figures in my life with that aspect to prepare me. Because shoot, I got a full scholarship out of high school. I was a defensive back and 140 pounds, and I went to a Division I Pac-12 school, which is, at 140 pounds, it's kind of rough. Like, you're not expected, like, you're not playing no Division I football at 140 pounds, defensive back. You got to go tackle these SC running backs that's 220, whatever it is. So, the technique side really was what separated me from my competition, because I was very technical. I wasn't the biggest or the strongest. I was fast, but I was very technical, and you can see it on film.
Yeah, so I mean, living proof of what you preach. Exactly. maybe not the ideal physical size, but you were able to make up for what you lacked with being technically sound. Absolutely. And as far as I can tell, a pretty great character as well.
Yeah, thank you, man. Yeah, I think 100% is where I got that from. Raw talent is not enough. It's technique. It'll keep you there when all else fails.
Tell me about some of the guys that you train at the NFL level.
Yeah, so I have Ben St. Juice is doing really well. We talked about him earlier. He's Washington Commanders. I think he's in year 2. There's Jordan Fuller with the Rams, Troy Hill with the Rams. There is I'm going blank right now. Keyshawn Nixon with the Packers. I helped him out NFL Combine. It was
like Tremaine Johnson, Greedy Williams as well.
Greedy Williams, also with the Combine. I'm forgetting my whole roster. NFL level. Who else is there right now? Do you have a list?
I had a couple of guys. I had Jordan, Tremaine, and Greedy. Yeah, but yeah, okay. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, some pretty high caliber, high talent players who have been doing some significant things at the NFL level. I mean, Jordan Fuller, who's the leading tackler on the Super Bowl winning Rams team.
John Johnson with the Browns as well. They're all spread around over there. I'll see them this offseason.
So with regard to these guys, what kind of athlete comes to see you and why?
What kind of athlete? An athlete, I believe, that's seeking more knowledge and believe that they can be able to gain that knowledge from what they see that I give out. And it's mostly word of mouth that I get my clientele. So some of them see my Instagram, my social media, and they see what I'm doing, and they, take interest. But I think majority comes from word of mouth, and they don't know until they come and see me. They just kind of hear it, and they may see drills. But when I'm actually with them, it gets a lot more technical than what you see on Instagram. Like, you may see the drills, and it's kind of for Instagram, but it's not a lot of that for me. It's making sure exactly that they know the how and the why, and I can break down, their techniques and their discipline there. So it's just the knowledge, I believe.
So what does a typical training program with you look like?
Constant repetition on, depending on what that specific development that they are looking for. Constant repetition, constant articulation of the detail and the discipline of the detail. And you don't go past, I'm not moving forward until I know that you fully understand it and you can execute it to where I see fit.
Yeah, and I can also tell that this is so much more than just a job for you. These aren't guys that you just collect a check from, teach them some fundamentals, send them out the door. Like, I can tell that you care about these guys. You genuinely want to see them succeed. You take pride when they do things at the NFL. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that shines through in your interactions. What's your relationship like with those guys off the field?
Yeah, I mean, I have really good rapport with all of them where I can talk to them. At the end of the day, each one of them, if we're talking about the NFL guys, what I genuinely like is they're all really good character guys. Every single one of them, they're really good people, really good guys. So our relationships are good to where if I call for advice or they call for advice, we can, it's reciprocated. In the off season, if they want to call, they want to come to LA, they want to go out and have a good time, they'll call me, and then I'll show them a good time. We'll have fun and hang out and things like that. And yeah, I mean, it's good right now. A lot of my time and attention has been to the younger guys. So, but I mean, any one of my guys that are in my network can call me at any time, and we can have a conversation, and they can ask me anything.
I do want to move on to your work here at DNA Prep Academy, but before we do that, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the season that just concluded at Calabasas. You're the defensive coordinator over there. You guys just had a heck of a season, reached the semifinals of the CIF Division 6 playoff bracket, and that was the best season that program had since the fall of 2019. And that was largely due to the play of Aaron Butler, DB, wide receiver, committed to USC. He's a top 10 recruit in the class of 24. So obviously we talked about the success of the program, but specifically shine a light on him, your experience coaching him, and what makes him such a successful player.
Aaron is a hard-working kid. He knows exactly what he wants. So that's very important, especially at this age. So he he can dictate a lot of his situation because he's working for it. Like he knows, he articulates. I always say he's like a little PR publicist. So when he talks and he's in a room with anybody, you give him nothing but respect because he knows how to articulate, he knows how to talk, he's very respectful, but he knows exactly what he wants and he'll transparently express it respectfully. And so, but as far as a player, one of the best athletes I've been around. So he's somebody that's very competitive. If you put somebody in across from him, whether he's on offense or defense, he's going to compete his butt off, and he's going to make sure that you're on his highlight tape and not the other way around. As far as he's a good leader on the field. His character, he's very respectful. Like he's a kid, so he may have some little nuances where he kind of can be a little immature at times, but whatever. But if I say anything to him or like cut it out or get it together, very respectful. Like and he'll snap out of, yes sir, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, all right, I got you.
So you've obviously worked with several guys at the NFL level who are where he ultimately wants to be. What do you see in him that makes you believe that he can get there?
Yeah, no, well his talent level is there, right? So he's one of, like I said, one of the better athletes that I have been around. So I think he can compete at that level. It's just more growth in within his technique, which is what he's doing, and he's focusing on this off season. It's just getting better with fully understanding the game, and he's been watching a lot of film this past year. His dad also played in the NFL too, so he has really good guidance with his father as well to prepare him with his work ethic and understanding where he's trying to get to. But comparison to the other players, there's a lot of players that I've coached that don't have the raw talent that he has now. And that's what he has. He has a lot of just raw athleticism. And so as he's continuing his journey with fine-tuning his technique, man, he's gonna be really good.
So a player like that, we've talked about all the things it takes to get there versus keep you there. And a player like Aaron, he has all the talent in the world. He's going to a first-rate football program. But just because you're a 4 or 5 star player, it doesn't guarantee you anything. It doesn't guarantee you time in the NFL. It doesn't guarantee you that you're even going to start in college. So we're obviously using Aaron as the example, but that's who we're talking about. But any kind of player at that caliber who has that sort of interest from schools, that sort of notoriety, and that sort of talent. Okay, they are what they are now, and they're the best of the best at that level. What does a player like that need to do right now and in these next couple of years of their career to make sure that they top out where they're supposed to top out?
Focus on development. Focus on preparing, because this era right now, I always say, this era right now is it can be a lot more detrimental than it can be helpful with as much exposure with social media, because it can give a lot of false entitlement, and the false entitlement creates a lot of complacency. And so a lot of kids of that caliber that has all this attention and has social media telling them how good they are, everybody telling them how good they are, they have a lack of work ethic. And that's what's most detrimental for these kids. So they need to understand. So they're all focused on the exposure. Like we talk about this 7-on-7 platform. I asked them, why do you want to play 7-on-7? Oh, so I can get, get the exposure so everybody can see me and make these videos and I can get recruited, right? So, and I'm like, I said, great, I understand. I know that's what you want, but you have to, don't focus so much on the exposure that you forget about the development and you go and get exposed. So that's what I'm always telling my guys. So most of the greatest advice I can give them is to focus on the development. It's okay to utilize the platforms to get the exposure, but you have to prepare and make sure you're able to show it and take advantage of when you have those opportunities to show it, because nobody cares that you can be a 4 or 5 star and then you get on a stage where you have to really compete with these other guys who are actually really good, and then you get exposed and you can't compare to them. And it happens all the time. We see it every year. You got these,
and then you're going to be on their social media highlights.
Exactly, right? And then what's hurting them is, they get to college, they go to this, prestigious college, and then they don't see the field. And they blame everybody else, but then they're embarrassed. Their self-esteem goes down. They feel like, they question their ability to play football, and it kind of gives them a rocky situation because they didn't have the guidance to understand that they needed to develop. They were so worried about the exposure. They got all the exposure. They went to all the little camps. They ran fast, whatever. They got the 4-star rating. They got the offers, right, that they wanted. So, man, congratulations. You PR'd yourself really well. Good job. But now you've exposed yourself, because now you go to this top-rated school and you can't compete with these guys because you forgot about preparing yourself to compete with those guys, and now you get lost in the sauce. And so that's another reason why I'm here with the youth, so I can help them understand this development. You develop first, and it's you run track in the spring. And I'm sorry to say this because it might rub a couple people wrong or whatever, even though I'm integrating into the world of 7-on-7 a little bit more now, so that I can help, push development within it a little bit more. But spring is not for 7-on-7. You run track. If football season is over, go run track and develop your speed.
I don't think you're going to rub anybody the wrong way by saying that. I mean, I think the vast majority of the coaches that we've had on the show will tell you the same thing. I mean, Scott Altenberg, we had him. He coaches Roderick Pleasant now, coached Dory Jackson back in the day. Both of those guys were track stars. I mean, Ray Fenton said very much the same thing down at Los Alamitos. I mean, I think that's a very common prevailing mindset in the game today.
I hope so, because the majority of the kids that I, talk to, they have no interest in running track. And I'm like, they're like 7-on-7. That's the priority. They want to figure out what team they're going to be on for 7-on-7, like who's playing here, who's playing these national tournaments, so I can get the exposure. And I'm like, you can still do that. Like, utilize your platforms, organize it as such so that you can be able to prioritize development, and then have time to be able to still go, take advantage of your opportunity to get the exposure that you need.
But there is a benefit to 7-on-7, right? I mean, you guys have it here at DNA Prep.
Yep. So there is a benefit. Like, it is a necessary platform now, because scouts are going to 7-on-7s. You are able to get content against competitors across the nation who are these 4 or 5-star athletes, where you can match up and test your ability to compete. And so it's definitely a benefit, but again, you don't play before you prepare. Right. And so you have to make sure, 7-on-7 is going to be there, right? You have to make sure that you prepare yourself first, so that when you go to these tournaments and you're subject to having that other 5-star on the other side of you that you're competing with, you put yourself in the best position to take advantage, to be on the up and up instead of being on the bottom of the barrel, right?
Well, and in terms of exposure, there's obviously a huge difference between what the scout is going to see when he comes to a game and watches you the entire game versus the 10-second highlight that you put up on Instagram, or the minute or the minute reel of your tape.
It's all scouting is it's your interview, right? And so we talk about the first time a scout sees you, you want to make sure that your first impression is great. It's amazing.
But they're going to see you in person. They're not going to see you on Instagram.
It's not Instagram. So they're going to see you in person, and they're going to decide whether you're the real deal or are you just faking out here for the social media, right? And so, again, you got to prepare for that, because you may get all this talk about how good you are amongst your peers and social media, seeing the social media. But once you get that, that USC coach sees you in person and you not in person what he expected, they may not come and see you again. Your name may come up in situation. Oh yeah, I saw him already. I already saw what he can do. We've moved on. And you want to make sure you don't put yourself in that situation. You want to do as much as you can that you can control to prepare yourself to take advantage of the opportunity you get.
So we're here at DNA Prep Academy. You've been here for about a year now. Tell our viewers about this place and how it got founded and what the backstory is and how you came to be involved.
Yeah, so DNA Academy was founded in 2016. They've been integrated within youth football and sports performance world since then. I have been doing my thing around Southern California, and I had met someone who was telling me about this school and the campus, and pretty much I came to do a visit, to do a tour, and I saw the campus with the field, and I had conversations with the owner on what his vision was to develop the next generation of student athletes, and pretty much I shared my vision on what I wanted to do. So I thought it would be a good relationship to come and bring, my knowledge and resources to try to, fulfill my journey, which is helping this next generation of student athletes in the way I can. And so I'm here now as the director of football. We have a developmental program. We have a tackle football program where we had a 12U team that went to the playoffs and had a pretty good run. Didn't go all the way to the championship. We actually have 3 guys now on the 12U team that also went to the FBU All-Star in Utah and did pretty well. But we have a pretty solid foundation. It goes from 5th grade to 8th grade, and year one, trying to continue to build from where we are now.
So prep schools are obviously very much on the rise as far as athletics go, as an alternative to the typical high school playing experience. Now, DNA prep obviously extends even beyond that to younger ages. Purely from an athletic standpoint, what advantages are gained by young athletes able to get this kind of instruction in this kind of setting at such a young age?
Yeah, so we try to map this out and organize this program as a college structured program, from the classroom to the athletics. We have a fining system where they get fined for dress code, attitude, misconduct.
You're fining 6th graders?
That's right, man, fining them, and it goes through a whole process to where there's teams on campus that's integrated within the whole program with soccer, basketball, football, baseball, and the guys that the teams that are at the top, they get different incentives and stuff like that, just like they would do if they were professional athletes, right? So we have that we're trying to prepare them for as far as structure and getting them prepared for their decision making.
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with football.
That has nothing to do with football. Their accountability, their integrity, right? So that's a benefit to, just prepare them mentally for life, right? Then as far as the athletics, the developmental program. So again, we train 2 hours a day, sports specific, position specific. We also do strength and conditioning and speed work two times a week as well, 2 hours a day. So that benefit of, that's integrated within the school. So you have to do that 2 hours a day. So the progression and the probability of development is just higher than a kid that's going to a regular school, because they're not getting that. They're not getting that structure. Like when you go to college, you got 6 a.m. workouts and you're working out, training, then going to class and then going to practice after and then going to study hall. We kind of have that same thing. So we have training first beginning of school, they go to class, they come out of school, then we have, I offer more developmental training after school for outside athletes as well. And then we also have study halls within the program, and then they come back to school and they got to do it all over again.
That's awesome. Now, on the other side of this, and you kind of already teased what the answer is going to be, but some critics of the prep school model, might say something to the effect of it does kids a disservice to focus so heavily on athletics, because surely that means that academics aren't as much of a priority, but that's not necessarily the case, especially at a place like this. Mm-hmm. How would you make the case to a parent considering DNA Prep Academy or any prep school really, that this kind of environment is the best place for their child to develop as a whole person and not just in one area?
Well, I believe it comes from experience from the staff and who we have here on the campus, who have experience with teaching and developing kids at the next level and professionals at the next level. Like our teachers here come from West Valley, which is a very prestigious school. So they have experience in the teaching world that's been doing it for a long time. So they know exactly what they're doing and how to prepare kids academically. On the sports side, all the sports directors here have experience coaching and training professionals, college, high school, and being able to develop those athletes as well. So they're getting that stuff. So again, but on the academic side, we have, it's not only online classes, but it's also in person. Everybody is very hands-on, and it's accredited. So, it transfers over to the high schools, and we prepare them as best as we can, just like any other school.
And some of the coursework that you guys have here, I mean, it's far beyond what you would normally get. I mean, I know, given what I do for a living, the things that caught my eye, you've got a really robust curriculum in visual and performing arts, animation, screenwriting, music production. I mean, these are all things that I wish I had access to in my pre-college education, and you're giving it to these kids in middle school. What are some of the other available courses of study that you may not get at your typical high school?
We're building, we're developing financial literacy class as well.
Huge.
Social media management. Things that we think are, like you said, he's very big, especially in this era, to help them prepare for what's to come in their life as a student athlete, and just as an adult, because right now we only have 2 female athletes on campus, but next year we hope to expand that number. But
what sports do they play?
They play soccer. And they're really good. I think they're the best in the school.
Shout them out. What are their names?
Michaela and Saracen. Michaela and Saracen. So it was a conversation, I think, 2 weeks ago on who the best was. And some of the other guys were saying it's me, but then the majority they looked at them and was like, they can run circles around everyone. And they're very humble individuals, so they just didn't say anything. They just kind of just looked and kind of laughed. But they're really cool people, but they're really smart. I think I can't tell you specifically what their grades are, but I know that they're like top in the class for their academics as well. So I see a really bright future for them as well. But
one of the things that really struck me about DNA Prep Academy, I was reading the letter from Paul Holyfield on the website, kind of explaining the background, the mission statement, how this all came to be. And the particular line that struck me was, 2020 has changed us all and has shown us that even the best growth plans can disappear. And that really ties into what we were talking about earlier about things you can control and things that you can't, because obviously that period of the last several years included a lot of things that we couldn't control.
Right.
And that applies to everybody, not just students, not just athletes, but from the young people that you work with. What were some of the impacts that the pandemic and the restrictions had on altering and changing those growth plans, and what role does DNA Prep have in making sure that those valuable years aren't wasted or weren't wasted?
Yeah, the COVID year just hurt so many people in their development, their recruiting process. Like a lot of my kids in high school, their transition to college was difficult because, a lot of the college athletes got their extra years back, and then it just created a difficult dynamic that, the opportunity that they were going to have just wasn't the same because people stayed. People that in the COVID year, they got half a season. Like, so if you're a senior, you got half a season. So you didn't even really get a full season to, showcase. Maybe you weren't very recruited, but you put in so much time in the off season to prepare for that season to, have an opportunity, and you just didn't have a fair shot. And so, control what you can control there. Some of them got opportunities, some of them had to go the JC route and have a different path and different journey. I just kept reiterating, control what you can control. Like, you have a different path now, but it's not over. Continue preparing for your opportunities and continue, growing as a person and as a player. And, when the opportunity comes, it shows itself, you make sure that you're there to take advantage of it.
That's awesome. And I'm sure for all the kids that you were able to help in that regard, I'm sure there are so many more who wish that they had that kind of guidance as well.
Yeah. Well, here at DNA too, what I like about, because like I said, it's a reclassification school as well. So it's in football. It's
Explain to me what that means.
Yeah, so reclass. So it's kind of, so getting held back and doing a grade over. So whereas in our era, maybe getting held back or doing a grade over was a negative perspective, and it was because you were wasn't up to par with your academics, or you consider you're dumb or whatever and stuff like that. Now it's a lot more accepted because it's in a space where, kind of like how basketball and AAU kind of used to do it, where it's a prep, so you're giving yourself more opportunity and time to develop and prepare yourself for, what you want to do. So it's been a very common theme now for kids to get held back and get
Intentionally.
held back intentionally, especially for a place like this, because it focuses on the development that you're looking for, so that you can better prepare yourself to now go into high school bigger, stronger, faster, smarter, more mature, and giving yourself better opportunity to maybe play earlier, start your recruiting process earlier in that aspect. So,
and again, all the while you're doing that, still receiving one additional year of first-class education and character development.
That's right. Absolutely.
So to kind of tie things up, my last question is not even about football, but about the education system more broadly, and kind of the things that you guys are doing here, because it's really an impressive program that you have. There's obviously the old trope. I'm sure I'm sure you said it a million times when you were in school. I know I did. When am I ever going to use this?
Yeah.
When am I ever going to use the Pythagorean theorem?
Right.
When am I ever going to need to recite that mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? So what sort of changes do you think that we could use to make toward how we educate young people, the things that we teach them? You hit on how your curriculum has financial literacy, social media management. I know I never got an education in that. So what sort of changes do you think are necessary to make to the education system and the curriculum, and how can DNA Prep help lay the groundwork to do that?
I think it's all about adapting to the world around you, and adapting to what how life is now. Like, you have so much access to start your own business and through social media, and be your own boss, be a small business owner, a large business owner, whatever it is. And I think that it should have focus in the curriculum of exactly how to maneuver through that space, so that you don't have to rely on somebody else to be successful, or be financially stable, and how to manage your assets. That's something that you just don't learn in school and stuff. And if you learn at a young age, because you got these social media influencers in high school that have over 100,000 followers, 1 million followers, who are their own business, and they learn how to maneuver in that social media space, whether they have podcasts, whether they have like just something that they're doing within their brand, whatever it is, but they know how to market themselves, and they know how to maneuver through that. And it's not just by learning plus and minuses or anything like that. But I think the essentials of academics, of English, learning how to read and write, learning how to comprehend math, learning how to calculate, right, and history, learning about your history, so you can learn like what people did for where you are, and how to learn from other people's mistakes, and how to grow. All those things are important, but when you bring something like the financial literacy into it, now you're giving a little bit more specific insight to how to maneuver into being your own entity. And I think that's important. So it's simply, to me, just listening to the world, and observing and listening to the world on what opportunities are there for this next generation, on how they can be successful and not so reliant. Because I believe, like, really, that's how the school systems has created us, to be reliant on somebody else. It's not like how to be your own entrepreneur. It's that you're supposed to go to school, supposed to go to college, go pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to college and learn a curriculum and get a degree that in some cases aren't even necessary. And then you got to go try to find some work from somebody else and work a 9 to 5 or whatever it is. And that's kind of how society has I feel like, has taught us that, you need to get a degree, go find a job, use that degree to go find a job, to go work for somebody else. And then you're miserable. And so now there's so many opportunities that you can expose yourself and give yourself exposure, but it's how do I financially, maneuver through that space so that I'm not, becoming, stressed out. Or you're gonna be stressed always. Something is always something. But how do I maneuver so I can be as successful as I want to be?
You got me sold.
Yeah, that's right.
Aire Justin, everybody, thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to go ahead and give you the last word, whatever you want to shout out. Where can we learn more about you? Yeah. Where can we learn more about DNA Prep?
Absolutely. So me specifically, Aire _athletics over all the social media handles, Instagram and Twitter. I'm a lot more active on Instagram. I need to transition a little bit more to Twitter, but though DNA Academy, you can go to DNA Academy, prepacademy.com and look up all the information there. You can schedule a tour there and come on campus and see everything that we have to offer, learn everything that we have to offer here as far as that. My Aire Athletics defensive back off season has started now, so you can go to aireathletics.com and apply and submit for a defensive back off season program. I offer privates, I offer groups from youth to high school. Also for any NFL athletes out there or college players, I'm going to be doing my NFL offseason starting most likely February. So you guys can get in contact with me, social media, or on my Aire Athletics to get in contact for that as well to get details. And I guess I can announce it here for 7-on-7. I am doing an Aire Athletics 7-on-7 team as well. You guys are getting an exclusive shout out there for that. I'll be doing 8U, so 8U, 12U, and high school. And so if you're interested in that as well, you guys can contact me through my Instagram as well and get more details for that.
Awesome. Go check him out. Aire Justin, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, this has been definitely one of my favorite conversations that we had. I hope you all enjoyed it too. Yeah. Thanks so much for sitting down with us, opening up the academy to us, and I'm sure we'll do more in the future. Definitely want to have you on again and have some more conversations. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next time on the Cannon Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.